At my wedding, my fiancé grabbed the microphone and announced to the crowd, "My wife has voluntarily decided to quit her job after the wedding to become a full-time homemaker and care for my 8 elderly relatives. She'll handle everything from their meals to their medical care." His family erupted in cheers. The officiant looked incredibly awkward, turning to ask if I agreed. I smiled, said 2 words, and my fiancé was left dumbfounded. Standing under the dazzling crystal chandeliers of the Plaza Hotel in New York, wearing a $50,000 custom Vera Wang gown, my fingertips were ice cold. The officiant had just said, "Now, the bride and groom will exchange their vows," when Hunter suddenly snatched the microphone. He was wearing a tailored Armani tuxedo, his hair slicked back perfectly. That face, which I once found handsome, now looked unfamiliar and smug under the stage lights, taking advantage of this moment. With all our friends and family here, Hunter cleared his throat, his voice echoing through the grand ballroom via the sound system. "I want to announce something regarding Penny and my life arrangements after marriage." I instinctively gripped my bouquet tighter. The thorns of the roses pierced through my sheer gloves into my palms. The slight pain kept me grounded. Down below, my parents were sitting at the head table, their expressions already shifting. On the other side, Hunter's parents, his 4 grandparents, and his 2 elderly great-aunts, 8 elderly people in total, were beaming with eager anticipation. Hunter turned to me, giving me what was supposed to be a deeply affectionate look. But there was no love in his eyes, only the satisfaction of absolute control. "She has voluntarily decided to resign from her position as a vice president at Morgan Stanley after the wedding to be a full-time wife at home." A low murmur of shock swept through the crowd. My position as an M&A vice president, pulling in over $1.5 million a year with bonuses, was the result of 7 grueling years on Wall Street and countless all-nighters. When Hunter was pursuing me, his favorite line was, "I admire your independence and ambition more than anything." But he wasn't done. His voice grew louder, taking on a performative, impassioned tone. "Penny has also promised that she will take full responsibility for caring for the 8 elderly members of my family. My parents, my grandparents, and my aunts. Their meals, their daily needs, their doctor's appointments. Penny will handle it all single-handedly." The Lawson family table erupted in cheers. His mother stood up, clapping frantically. His father grinned from ear to ear. Hunter's grandmother even wiped away a tear, grabbing a relative's arm and saying, "Look at my grandson, marrying such a dutiful, traditional wife." Meanwhile, my family's side of the room was dead silent. My mother's face was deathly pale. My father was gripping his wine glass so tightly his knuckles were white. The officiant, an experienced middle-aged man, froze. He clearly hadn't encountered a spontaneous hijacking like this in his career. He looked at me awkwardly, his eyes full of sympathy and inquiry. Hunter shoved the microphone toward my face, wearing the smile of a victor. "Come on, Penny. Tell everyone right now. Is this voluntary? Are you willingly sacrificing for the Lawson family?" The entire ballroom went silent. Over 400 pairs of eyes stared at me. Some were expectant, some were gloating, some were worried, and some were utterly confused. The videographer zoomed in on my face. Hunter leaned in close, whispering so only I could hear. "Be a good girl. Say I do and save your parents some face. Otherwise, how are we going to end this wedding?" I looked into his eyes, seeing the naked, calculating manipulation. Suddenly, I remembered his words from 3 months ago, when he proposed at a rooftop restaurant overlooking the Manhattan skyline. "Penny, I will respect you for the rest of my life, support your career, and give you the perfect marriage." I also remembered the text messages I accidentally saw on his phone last week. A conversation with his mother. "Mom, don't worry. Once you're married, I'll make her quit. What kind of woman makes that much money? She works 80 hours a week. Who is going to take care of the house? Your grandparents are getting old and need a caretaker." Hunter: "I know. I have it all planned out. I'll announce it publicly at the wedding. She cares too much about her public image. She won't dare object in front of 400 people. At the time, I had felt a chill run through my body, but I foolishly told myself he was just appeasing his mother and wouldn't actually do it. Now, the cold, hard reality slapped me across the face. The officiant cleared his throat nervously. "Bride, what the groom just said, do you?" He trailed off, but his meaning was clear. Hunter nudged the microphone closer, a hint of impatience and threat flashing in his eyes. I took a deep breath and grabbed the microphone. As my fingers touched the cold metal, I suddenly felt completely at peace. I looked down at the crowd. My parents had already stood up. My mother was shaking her head with tears in her eyes, mouthing the words, "Don't agree." I looked at the expectant faces of the 8 elderly Lawsons. I looked at his mother's expression, which practically screamed, "You hit the jackpot marrying into our family." I looked at Hunter, the man I had loved for 2 years, the man I thought I would spend the rest of my life with, and then I smiled. It wasn't a forced smile, nor a bitter one. It was a smile of complete relief, the kind of smile that comes from finally seeing things clearly. Hunter flinched, clearly not expecting me to smile. I pulled the microphone close and articulated 2 words clearly and calmly into the silent ballroom. "I refuse." My voice echoed through the speakers, bouncing off the walls of the plaza. Hunter's smile froze. The cheering from his family's table stopped abruptly. The room was so quiet you could hear the hum of the air conditioning. I continued, my voice steady and powerful. "First, I am not quitting my job. My position at Morgan Stanley is the result of 7 years of blood, sweat, and tears. My $1 million compensation is a reflection of my value." Second, I turned toward the Lawson table, meeting the eyes of the 8 elderly relatives. Caring for aging parents is the duty of their own children, not the sole responsibility of a daughter-in-law. "Hunter, you have 2 siblings. Why on earth am I expected to be the sole caretaker for 8 people? His mother shot up from her chair. "Penny Snow, how dare you speak like that? When you marry into the Lawson family, you become a Lawson." "I am Penelope Snow," I interrupted, raising my voice. "First and foremost, I am my own person. Then, I am my parents' daughter. And only last am I someone's wife. I am not anyone's free maid or live-in nurse." Hunter finally snapped out of his shock. His face turned livid, and he reached out to snatch the microphone back. "Are you insane? This is our wedding!" I stepped back, dodging his hand, gripping the mic tightly. Third, and most importantly, I turned to face the entire crowd of guests, sweeping my gaze across familiar and unfamiliar faces. "I am officially canceling this wedding." The ballroom exploded. Total chaos. Hunter was dumbfounded. He stared at me with wide eyes, as if looking at a stranger. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. His mother started screaming. "Penny, do you know what you're doing? We paid for this. We spent money on the wedding fund, the hotel." "I paid the $50,000 deposit for this hotel," I said coldly. "The credit card receipt is in my phone. As for your family's contribution to the wedding fund, your family gave $15,000. My parents added $40,000, bringing it to $55,000, which was put into a joint account for our future." I reached into a hidden pocket in the voluminous skirt of my gown and pulled out my phone. Yes, I had come prepared. This morning, some gut instinct had told me to slip my phone into my dress, and now, in front of everyone, I opened my banking app. I am transferring that $55,000 directly back to my parents' account right now. The notification chime of a successful transfer rang out clearly over the microphone. As for the other expenses, I looked at Hunter. I bought my dress. I bought our rings. I even paid for your Armani tux. The only thing your family contributed was that $15,000, and I'm refunding it to you right now. I tapped my screen again. Actually, I transferred you $30,000. Keep the change. Consider it a breakup fee. Hunter's face went from livid to a ghostly white. He pointed a trembling finger at me. You planned this. You wanted to ruin this wedding from the start. No, I shook my head, feeling a sudden sting of tears in my eyes. Though I fought them back, up until yesterday, I was still looking forward to being your bride. It was you, Hunter. You chose to stand in front of 400 people and treat me like a piece of property, dictating how I would spend the rest of my life. The officiant was completely at a loss, standing to the side and dabbing his forehead with a handkerchief. The crowd was in an uproar. My parents pushed through the crowd toward the stage, while Hunter's relatives stood up and began shouting accusations. Standing in the center of the stage in my pristine white gown, microphone in hand, I felt like I could finally breathe freely for the first time in months. To all our guests, I apologize for the spectacle. My voice cut through the noise one last time. Dinner is on me tonight. Please, eat, drink, and enjoy yourselves. Consider it a celebration of me cutting my losses and getting a new lease on life. With that, I shoved the microphone into the officiant's hands, gathered the heavy skirt of my gown, and walked straight down the stairs toward my parents. Let's go, Mom, Dad. We're going home. My mother pulled me into a fierce hug, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. But they weren't tears of sorrow. They were tears of profound relief. Let's go home, sweetie. I'll make you something to eat. My father, his eyes red, glared fiercely at Hunter before shielding my mother and me as we walked toward the exit. Behind us, Hunter's voice cracked in a desperate roar. Penny! Stop right there. Do you think if you walk out that door today, anyone else will ever want you? A 30-year-old woman who runs out on her wedding? I didn't look back. I just kept my spine straight, and under the gaze of 400 people, I walked step by step out of the venue that had almost become the graveyard of my future. The train of my dress dragged across the polished marble floors like a clean, decisive wound. And I knew that this wound would eventually heal and become my strongest armor. Outside the plaza, the Manhattan night sky was glowing, the skyscrapers lighting up the horizon. I took off my heels, stepped barefoot onto the cool pavement, and took a deep breath. The taste of freedom was intoxicating. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was a text from my assistant, Lily. Penny, I am so sorry to bother you on your wedding day, but Richard Cole moved the America's Strategy meeting to 9 a.m. tomorrow. It's about the $500 million Novatech buyout. I typed back, received. I turned to my worried parents and smiled. Mom, Dad, I have a massive meeting tomorrow. I need to go to the office tonight to prep the files. But your dress. My mother looked at my massive gown. It's fine. I hailed a yellow cab. I'm going straight to Wall Street. I have spare clothes in my office. Before getting into the car, I glanced back at the hotel. Hunter had burst through the doors, his tuxedo disheveled, his face twisted in rage as he tried to run after me. But I had already closed the door. Morgan Stanley Building, please. Broadway, I told the driver. As the cab merged into the bustling NYC traffic, I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman looking back wearing a wedding dress, her makeup slightly smudged, but her smile radiant was someone I had never truly met before. Strong, lucid, and fearless. When the cab pulled up to my office building, the driver looked at me through the mirror several times before finally asking, Miss, did you just get married? Or are you a runaway bride? I looked at the sea of white tulle taking up the entire back seat. You could say I'm a runaway bride. I smiled, handed him $100 bill, and said, keep the change. Thanks. Pushing through the heavy glass doors of the corporate building, the midnight lobby was vast and silent. The night guard, a guy named Tom, saw me and his eyes practically bulged out of his head. Miss Snow? Weren't you getting married today? It's over, I said curtly, swiping my badge to access the executive elevators. The mirrored walls of the elevator reflected my full image. For a moment, I allowed my shoulders to slump, but just 3 seconds later. When the elevator dinged at the 68th floor, my spine snapped straight again, and my expression neutralized into pure professionalism. The lights in my office were still on. Lily, my incredibly dedicated assistant, was actually still there. "Miss Snow!" She jumped out of her chair when she saw me. "Why are you dressed like—" "Find me my backup suit," I said, walking straight toward the private executive washroom attached to my office. "Also, consolidate all the due diligence files for the Novatech buyout. I want them in my inbox by 7 a.m. right away." Lily, having worked for me for 4 years, quickly swallowed her shock. "Your clothes are in the second drawer, pressed and ready." I locked the washroom door and began the arduous process of peeling off the complex gown. Every layer of tulle, every rhinestone, felt like a mocking reminder of the absurd farce I had just survived. When the final corset dropped to the floor, I looked at my naked self in the mirror, took a deep breath, and splashed cold water on my face. I redid my makeup. I slipped into a sharp, charcoal gray Armani skirt suit. 10 minutes later, when I walked back out, the woman in the reflection was back to being Penny Snow, the ruthless M&A vice president who had survived 7 years in the financial trenches. Lily had already prepared hot coffee and stacked the files carefully on my desk. "Penny." She hesitated. "Are you okay?" "I'm perfect," I said, taking a sip of the black coffee. The bitter liquid snapped my brain to full attention. Better than I've been in 2 years. At 2 a.m., just as I finished reviewing the final due diligence report, my personal phone began to vibrate violently. First, 47 missed calls from Hunter. Then, a bombardment of text messages. "Penny, pick up the phone. You completely humiliated me in front of the whole city today. If you come back right now and apologize, I might still forgive you. You think your little Wall Street job makes you untouchable? Just wait. I'll make sure you can't show your face in this industry." The last text made me pause. I typed a simple reply. "I look forward to it." Then, I blocked his number. Next came the texts from his mother. They were vile, essentially calling me an ungrateful, virtueless woman who deserved to die alone. I didn't reply. I just blocked her. The extended family group chat was also exploding. Hunter's cousin had posted a massive rant about how I had publicly humiliated the Lawson family and broken the hearts of their elderly relatives. "Who would ever want a woman like her?" he wrote. I calmly typed, "At everyone, due to irreconcilable differences in our views on marriage, the wedding has been canceled. Please direct all future communications through our respective legal counsel. There is no longer a need for this chat." I tapped Leave Group. Half of my world went quiet. The other half was a string of voicemails from my parents. I tapped the first one. My mother's tearful voice played. "Penny, are you at the office? Don't be too sad. Mom and Dad support you 100%. The last voicemail was from my dad. In the background, I could hear shouting. "Penny, Hunter and his parents are at our house causing a scene. They're demanding an explanation. Do not come home. Stay at a hotel for a few days." My grip on my phone tightened. Just then, a knock on the door. Lily peeked her head in, looking distressed. "Penny?" The lobby security just called up. "Your mother is downstairs in the lobby. She says she needs to see you." My mother? Why is she here? I grabbed my blazer and headed for the door. "I'll go down." As the elevator descended, my mind raced. If the Lawsons were harassing my parents, my mom must have come all the way to Manhattan in the middle of the night because she was terrified I might do something drastic. But when I stepped into the grand marble lobby, the scene made my blood run cold. It wasn't just my mother. Hunter, his parents, and his cousin Bradley, a sleazy personal injury lawyer, had my mother surrounded. There were 5 of them aggressively shouting at her. My mother looked frail and pale, clutching her purse tightly. "Mom!" I marched over, pulling her behind me and casting an icy glare at the 5 Lawsons. "This is a corporate building. Leave immediately." "Penny!" Hunter's eyes were bloodshot. He smelled strongly of alcohol and rage. You finally decided to show your face. You think blocking me is the end of this? Let me tell you, it's not. His mother lunged forward, pointing a finger an inch from my nose. You heartless bitch! How did our family ever wrong you? You cancel the wedding on a whim and make the Lawsons the laughingstock of New York. You made yourselves a laughingstock, I said coldly. When you decided to announce to a room full of people that I was going to be your unpaid domestic servant, did you not think that was a joke? That was for your own good. Hunter's father chimed in, his face red. What good is a woman making all that money? A woman's place is raising kids and managing a home. Hunter is more than good enough for you. Don't be ungrateful. I actually laughed. For my own good? Asking me to throw away a $500,000 career to act as an on-call nurse for 8 of your elderly relatives? 24/7? You call that my own good? Bradley, the lawyer cousin, pushed up his glasses, trying to project professional authority. Miss Snow, legally speaking, even though the ceremony wasn't completed, you signed the marriage license beforehand. In the eyes of the state of New York, you are legally married. Unilaterally abandoning the marriage means you are liable for damages. I narrowed my eyes. What damages? Emotional distress? Financial losses for the wedding prep? And defamation of the Lawson family name. Bradley pulled a folder out of his briefcase. This is a preliminary estimate. $200,000. If you don't agree, we will sue you. My mother trembled behind me. You! This is extortion! I took the ridiculous list of demands, glanced at it, and laughed out loud. Mr. Lawson! I slapped the folder back against his chest. You seem to forget that I do mergers and acquisitions at Morgan Stanley. I deal with more complex litigation before breakfast than you will see in your entire ambulance-chasing career. I took a step forward, forcing Hunter to step back. First, while we did sign the license, an immediate public abandonment on the grounds of fraud and irreconcilable differences means any judge will annul this marriage faster than you can blink. Second, I turned to Bradley. Your listed damages are laughable. I booked the hotel. I paid for it. I bought the dress. The rings. The only money your family spent was a $15,000 contribution, which I have already returned, along with a $30,000 premium. Do I need to print out the wire transfer receipts and tape them to your office door? Bradley's face twitched. Third, defamation. I sneered. Do you want me to subpoena the videographer's footage from the wedding and let a jury decide? Let's see how the public reacts to a man announcing he's forcing his wife into unpaid servitude. If that video hits Twitter, guess whose side the internet will take? The arrogance drained out of Hunter's parents immediately. Finally, I looked dead at Hunter. If you really want to take this to court, I welcome it. My legal team will be handled by Skadden Arps. I'm sure you've heard of them. Hunter's face drained of color, his lips trembling. Skadden is one of the most ruthless, high-priced corporate law firms in the country. With Hunter's struggling family business, they couldn't afford to litigate against a junior associate, let alone a Wall Street VP. Now, I pointed toward the revolving doors. Leave. If you ever harass me or my family again, I will have a restraining order filed before you wake up tomorrow. Security had already arrived, standing nearby with their hands on their radios. Hunter stared at me. His eyes held anger, unwillingness, and a dark resentment I had never seen before. You're going to regret this, Penny, he hissed through gritted teeth. No man is ever going to want a domineering, castrating woman like you. When you're old and your career stalls, you'll come crawling back, begging for me. Don't hold your breath, I replied flatly. I turned and supported my mother. Security, please escort these people off the premises. Watching the Lawsons being herded out by the guards, the tension in my shoulders finally eased. Penny! My mother grabbed my hand, tears falling again. This is all my fault. We should have seen what kind of family they were. It's not your fault, Mom, I said softly. I made a bad choice, but I fixed it. After settling my mother into a nice hotel near my office, I returned to the 68th floor. The sun was just starting to rise over the East River. Lily handed me a fresh cup of tea, her eyes hesitant. Miss Snow, do you need me to contact our PR firm to handle the fallout? I imagine rumors are already spreading. I checked my phone. She was right. Several friends in the finance sector had texted me checking in. Vague gossip about a Wall Street VP dumping her groom at the altar was already circulating on LinkedIn and private WhatsApp groups. Worse, Hunter's older sister had posted a massive essay on Facebook and Instagram. While she didn't name me directly, the details were obvious to anyone who knew us. The comments were already tearing into my background. Not yet, I told Lily. Let them talk. Keep an eye on the sentiment. If there's coordinated, defamatory libel, we'll act. At 9 a.m., I walked into the America's Strategy meeting room. The chatter died instantly. A dozen pairs of eyes locked onto me, some curious, some probing, some sympathetic. Richard Cole, the managing director, cleared his throat. All right, let's get started. Today's focus is the $500 million Novatech buyout. Penny, give us the update. Without missing a beat, I booted up the projector and began breaking down the transaction structure, valuation models, and potential regulatory risks. I was clinical, professional, and entirely focused. It was as if the chaotic farce of the previous night had never happened, but during a quick bathroom break, I overheard two associates whispering near the sinks. Is it true? Left him at the altar? 100%. My buddy was there. He said the groom tried to force her to quit her $450K job to be a stay-at-home nurse for his entire extended family. I'd run too. Still, making a scene like that. Her reputation in the industry is going to take a hit. I pushed open the stall door. The whispers stopped instantly. The two women smiled awkwardly and scrambled out. I looked at myself in the mirror. Impeccable makeup, sharp suit, unwavering gaze, reputation. If defending my basic autonomy and refusing to be treated as property damaged my reputation, then that reputation wasn't worth having. Back in my office that afternoon, I received a surprise text from Zachary Sterling. Zach was an alum from my university, a mentor during my early IB days, and now the founder of a highly successful venture capital firm in Tribeca. We maintained a friendly, professional relationship. Heard yesterday was eventful. His message was brief. Need any help? I hesitated, then replied, Not at the moment, but thank you. Are you free for dinner? I'd like to discuss the Novatech deal. I know your fund has some interest. Tonight, 7 p.m., Locanda Verde. I needed institutional backing for the Novatech buyout. And Zach's VC firm was the perfect partner. More importantly, I needed to pack my schedule so tight that I wouldn't have a single second to spiral emotionally. At 7 p.m., I arrived at the restaurant in Tribeca. Zach was already there, sitting by the window in a light gray tailored shirt, sleeves rolled up, looking at his phone. At 34, he exuded a calm, grounded confidence. Sorry I'm late, I said, taking the seat across from him. He looked up, his eyes lingering on my face for a fraction of a second. You look exhausted. Didn't sleep? Was reviewing files. We ordered, talked industry trends, and then dove into Novatech. Zach's analysis was razor sharp, hitting on vulnerabilities in the startup's tech stack that I hadn't fully considered. As the business talk wound down, he suddenly shifted gears. I ran a background check on Hunter. My fork paused. His father's construction materials business is facing a severe liquidity crisis. They have massive outstanding loans with Chase, Zach said evenly. They were desperate for a daughter-in-law who could inject cash and leverage into their family. Your income and your Wall Street connections weren't just a bonus to them, they were a lifeline. Everything suddenly made sense. The aggressive push for a quick wedding, the sudden demands. It was a calculated trap. They didn't want a partner. They wanted a high-yield asset they could strip for parts. Do you need me to make a few calls? Zach asked. I know the chief risk officer at Chase. No, I put my fork down. I'm done with him. Zach nodded and let the subject drop. When we walked out to the valet, Zach paused. Penny, I probably shouldn't say this, but you did the right thing yesterday. He looked me dead in the eye. A lot of people, even brilliant women, would have caved to the social pressure in that room. You didn't. That's incredible. My throat tightened, but I kept my composure. Thank you. Call me if you need anything. Seriously. Anytime. He handed me his personal card. I returned to my luxury condo in Battery Park City around 10 p.m. I had bought it 3 years ago, draining my savings for the down payment. The $12,000 monthly mortgage was steep, but it was mine. Hunter had constantly hinted at moving in, but I always deflected, insisting we wait until we were married. Subconsciously, I must have known. Exhausted, I lay in bed. But my mind was racing. My phone buzzed with an unknown number. I answered it. Is this Penelope Snow? I'm a reporter from the New York Post. We'd love to get a comment on your runaway wedding. I hung up and blocked the number. But a second and third call came through, immediately. My Instagram DMs were flooded. People were debating my actions. Some called me a toxic feminist. Others praised me. But the sheer volume was staggering. The story was leaking fast. I sat up, opened my laptop, and began drafting a statement. Not a defense, not a tearful plea, just cold, hard facts. My name is Penelope Snow. Yesterday, at my wedding, I chose to terminate my engagement and cancel the ceremony due to a fundamental, irreconcilable breach of trust regarding our future. I believe marriage must be an equal partnership built on mutual respect, not a transaction where one partner is expected to sacrifice their career, autonomy, and financial independence to serve as the other's subordinate. This is a private matter, and I will not be commenting further. However, I retain the right to pursue aggressive legal action against any party engaging in defamation or targeted harassment. I emailed it to a friend who worked at a top PR agency in Manhattan, asking her to distribute it to the right channels. By 1 a.m., I stood by my floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the Statue of Liberty. New York City never stops for anyone's heartbreak. The market doesn't care if you cry. You either adapt and leverage the rules, or you get crushed. Hunter said I would regret it. I looked at my reflection in the glass and whispered, "No, you will." The next morning at 7 a.m., my PR friend Mark called me. He sounded hyped. "Penny, your statement was picked up by a few major FinTwit accounts and a Bloomberg columnist. It is gaining traction fast. What's the angle?" I took a sip of my espresso, my eyes fixed on my Bloomberg terminal. "Mostly supportive," Mark said. "That line about equal partnership versus subordinate sacrifice is going viral on LinkedIn. It's hitting a major nerve with professional women. Any backlash?" "Yeah. The incel crowd and some conservative blogs are tearing you apart, calling you a greedy, barren corporate drone. Plus, several accounts claiming to be Hunter's relatives are spamming the comments sections, saying you're a tyrant who abused his elderly parents and broke your promises." My grip on the mouse tightened. "Do you need me to deploy a bot sweep?" Mark asked. "Not yet. Let them talk. But archive everything." At 10 a.m., during an M&A team huddle, my personal phone rang. It was my mother. I hit ignore and texted, "In a meeting, we'll call back." But then my dad called. I felt a pit in my stomach. I signaled my team to pause and stepped into the hallway. "Penny?" My mother was sobbing. Hunter's mother brought a group of relatives to our neighborhood in Westchester. "They are holding up signs outside our gated community calling you a gold digger and a fraud. They're telling our neighbors you cheated on him." My blood boiled. "Did you call the cops?" The police came and told them to disperse. "But they are just circling the block. Your dad's blood pressure is spiking. The neighbors are staring. I'm coming home right now." "No, don't!" My dad took the phone. "That's exactly what they want. They want to bait you into a public fight. Your mother and I have lived long enough to handle a few crazy people. You stay in the city, do your job. Do not let them derail your life." He hung up before I could argue. I leaned against the cold glass of the office wall, taking deep breaths to suppress the urge to commit violence. The Lawsons were truly shameless. When I returned to the meeting, I ran the numbers perfectly, but internally, a war had started. At 2 p.m., Lily walked in, looking grim. "Miss Snow, I tracked those Twitter accounts spamming the comments. The IP addresses trace back to a specific zip code, the exact location of Bradley Lawson's law firm in Queens. Furthermore, he's been in contact with a few trashy gossip blogs, trying to buy sponsored posts to smear you." I looked at the printed IP logs. I started to smile. "Penny?" Lily looked worried. "I'm fine, Lily. I just find it hilarious that they think I'm still that naive girl Hunter manipulated with cheap flowers and sweet talk 2 years ago." I stood up. "Gather all the evidence, the harassment, the IPs, the defamation. We have enough for a massive tort claim. Also, call my personal attorney, David Siegel. Tell him I need to see him at 4 p.m. Siegel was a partner at one of the top litigation boutiques in the city. When I laid out the case, he adjusted his glasses. "The evidence is airtight. We can sue for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and harassment. However, civil suits take years, Penny. And they might countersue to bleed you dry. Let them try," I sneered. "I've been saving for a rainy day." Also, Siegel hesitated. "Airing dirty laundry in court might spook your conservative banking clients. If a client drops me because I refuse to let a family of grifters destroy my life, they aren't a client I want." I slid another folder across his desk. "This is the financial profile of Hunter's father's company. According to public filings, they have an $8 million commercial loan with Chase coming due next month. Their liquid cash is barely $2 million. Siegel's eyes lit up. "You want—" "I want you to use your back-channel contacts," I said evenly. "If Chase Bank's risk department were to discover that the guarantors of this loan are currently embroiled in massive, costly defamation litigation and are demonstrating erratic, highly public, and legally compromising behavior, do you think Chase would renew that credit line?" Siegel chuckled. "Penny, you are going for the jugular. They drew first blood," I said, closing the folder. Leaving the law firm, I checked my phone. The narrative was shifting again. A guest from the wedding had anonymously posted on Reddit with a blurry photo of Hunter yelling at me on stage. I was at this wedding. The groom is a psychopath. He literally ambushed her with a microphone and told a room of 400 people she was going to be a 24/7 maid for his grandparents. His family cheered like they just bought a slave. The bride looked like she was going to throw up, but she handled it like a boss and walked out. The post exploded, making its way to TikTok. The court of public opinion was violently swinging in my favor. Zach actually retweeted a link to the story with a simple comment: "Respect is the absolute minimum requirement for a partnership." His endorsement carried weight in the NYC finance sphere. Influential tech bros and VC founders started chiming in, supporting my right to my career. I felt a strange warmth in my chest. I wasn't fighting alone. Then, my phone rang. A local NYC number. "Penny!" Hunter's voice was shaking with rage. "What the hell do you want? You put my mother in the hospital. Are you happy now?" "Your mother is in the hospital? She had a hypertensive crisis. She's in the ER," he yelled. "All because of what you did. If anything happens to her, I will end you." "Hunter," I said coolly. "First, I'm sorry to hear about your mother, but it has nothing to do with me. Second, if your family comes near my parents again, I will have you all arrested. Third, your cousin Bradley's little astroturfing campaign against me on Twitter? I have the IP logs. Expect a cease and desist from my lawyers tomorrow, followed by a massive lawsuit, dead silence on the other end." "What? What are you talking about?" "I'm saying the game is over," I said. "Stop the harassment, issue a public apology, or I will bury you in court. And I'm sure Chase Bank would love to read the discovery documents." "You're threatening me?" Hunter's voice trembled. No, I'm executing a strategy, I said. You thought I was just a paycheck. You forgot how I earned that paycheck. I hung up. When I got home, Zach texted. Saw your PR statement. Flawless. Also, Chase Bank is their primary lender. I know their VP of commercial risk. Let me know if you want an intro. I stared at the screen. Zach was going out of his way to offer me lethal ammunition. Why are you helping me this much? I texted back. A few minutes later, because 2 years ago, my sister went through something similar, but she didn't have your courage. I remembered Valerie's wedding. It was lavish, but 6 months later, she vanished to Paris. I'll take that intro, I replied. The next morning, Lily rushed into my office. Penny, Hunter posted on Instagram. Photos of his mother in a hospital bed attached to monitors. He wrote this massive caption blaming you, saying your cruelty caused her stroke. I looked at the photos. The dimly lit hospital room, the sad faces, it was textbook emotional manipulation. The comments were turning against me again. People love a victim. Hire a private investigator, I told Lily immediately. A good one. Find out exactly why his mother went to the hospital. If I put her in the hospital, I'd own it. But if this was a setup, I was going to ruin them. That afternoon, thanks to Zach's intro, I sat down with the VP of Risk at Chase Bank. I didn't make emotional pleas. I simply handed him a dossier of the Lawson family's erratic behavior, the impending lawsuit for defamation, and the PI's preliminary findings indicating severe internal family disputes. We value transparency in our commercial clients, the VP said, his face grave. If the guarantors are facing personal litigation and engaging in public scandals, it significantly alters their risk profile. We will be initiating an immediate review of their credit facility. I appreciate your diligence. I smiled. That evening, I attended an exclusive networking gala at the Mandarin Oriental. Zach met me there. I wore a backless midnight blue gown. As we mingled, Hunter's uncle, a mid-level executive at a logistics firm, spotted me. He marched over, drink in hand, sneering. Well, if it isn't the runaway bride, you put my sister in the ICU, and here you are drinking champagne and networking. Have you no shame? He spoke loudly enough to draw a crowd. Zach stepped forward, but I placed a hand on his arm to stop him. Uncle Robert, I said, my voice perfectly modulated. I'm sorry your sister is ill, but you and I both know she isn't in the hospital because of me. My PI had delivered the goods just an hour ago. She is in the hospital because she lent your nephew, Bradley, $100,000 for a failed real estate scam. She went to his law office yesterday, got into a screaming match in the parking lot, and suffered a hypertensive spike. I have the private investigator's report and the parking lot surveillance stills in my inbox. Would you like me to airdrop them to everyone in this room? Robert's face turned gray. Furthermore, I stepped closer. I know you are currently up for a promotion to senior VP at your firm. Do you really want to be named as a co-defendant in a massive defamation and racketeering lawsuit? Because if you keep harassing me, you will be. He practically tripped over his own feet, backing away, then turned and fled. The surrounding crowd chuckled softly. Zach looked down at me, a distinct gleam of admiration in his eyes. Remind me never to cross you, he murmured. Just don't try to make me your indentured servant, and we'll be fine. I quipped. The PI's full report was devastating. Not only had Hunter's mother collapsed due to fighting with Bradley over stolen money, but Hunter himself had taken out $50,000 in shady, high-interest payday loans over the last month to cover bad crypto bets. It was time to end this. I didn't bother with PR statements this time. I went straight to LinkedIn and Twitter, posting a comprehensive, emotionless thread titled, "The Reality Behind the Wedding Altar." I detailed the entire timeline, the manipulation, the text messages where he admitted he planned to force me to quit, the demands that I act as a free nurse, the harassment of my parents, And finally, the receipts. The parking lot photos of his mother fighting his cousin. The timeline proving her hospitalization had nothing to do with me. It was a masterclass in corporate-level destruction applied to a personal dispute. Within an hour, it was the #1 trending topic in New York. Major feminist authors, finance influencers, and everyday women rallied behind it. The comments were overwhelmingly in my favor. Hunter's family was obliterated in the court of public opinion. The next morning, Lily came in, beaming. Chase Bank officially declined to renew Lawson Construction's $8 million credit line. They are calling the loan, and Hunter's dad collapsed from the stress. He's actually in the hospital now. I felt a brief flicker of pity, but it vanished instantly. Later that day, as I walked out of the Morgan Stanley building, a disheveled figure stepped out of the shadows. It was Hunter. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. He had a pathetic, desperate look in his eyes. "Penny," he croaked. "Please, I'm begging you. My dad had a stroke. The business is going bankrupt. I owe $50,000 to people who will hurt me. Please. Just lend me $50,000. For old time's sake." I looked at the man I almost married. "Hunter, why do you think I would give you a dime? I know I messed up. But we loved each other. You loved my W-2. You loved my credit score. You loved the idea of a high-end appliance that could also feed your ego," I said coldly. "Your dad's company failing is a business result. Your debt is a result of your gambling. You are 30 years old. Deal with it." "You're going to let my family die?" he screamed, lunging forward. Building security immediately tackled him to the ground. I didn't even flinch. I turned and walked to my waiting black car. Actions have consequences, Hunter. That weekend, Zach invited me onto a private yacht sailing down the Hudson River. As we passed the illuminated skyline, the cool wind felt like a baptism. "You handled it perfectly," Zach said, handing me a glass of wine. "If you had caved, you would be miserable right now." "I know." I leaned against the railing. If it wasn't for that moment at the altar, I might have actually married him. I was so blind. "You aren't blind." Zach moved closer. "You just wanted to believe the best in someone. But you're awake now." He looked at me with an intensity that made my pulse jump. "If you're ever ready to start over, just know there are better men out there." "Like you?" I asked playfully. "Exactly like me," he said smoothly. "But no rush. Take your time." The following week, my victory was cemented. Richard Cole called me into his office. Because of my flawless execution of the Novatech due diligence, and the sheer grit I had displayed in my personal life without letting it affect my performance, the board had voted. "Penny," Richard smiled. "Congratulations. You are being promoted to managing director, heading up our new FinTech Innovations division." At 33, I was one of the youngest female MDs in the firm's history. But the war wasn't completely over. Bradley Lawson, furious that his reputation was ruined, launched a shell VC fund called Apex Ventures, using money he had embezzled from his uncle's dyeing company. In a desperate bid for revenge, he offered double salaries to poach Novatech's entire core tech team right before our buyout closed. Novatech's CEO called me in a panic. "Penny, they are all threatening to walk. If we lose the AI team, the valuation tanks." I drove straight to the Novatech offices in Brooklyn. I sat the 12 core developers down in a conference room. "Apex Ventures is offering you double your salary," I said calmly. "But their funding comes from embezzled money. They have no product roadmap. They are a revenge vehicle. If you go there, your stock options will be worthless paper when the SEC raids them in 6 months." I projected a slide on the screen. "If you stay with Morgan Stanley's acquisition, you get a 50% base bump, massive retention bonuses, and autonomous control over the new AI platform we are building. You will be backed by a $1 trillion institution, not a strip mall lawyer." I also made a midnight call to a former classmate working at Google in Silicon Valley. I offered 3x market rate to fly in 2 elite AI architects to temporarily shore up the team. The crisis was averted. The core team stayed. I didn't stop there. I compiled the evidence of Bradley's embezzlement and his illegal use of funds to launch Apex Ventures, and I quietly forwarded the dossier to my contacts at the SEC and the FBI white-collar division. 3 days before the Novatech deal officially closed, the FBI raided Apex Ventures. Bradley was let out in handcuffs on the evening news. The Novatech acquisition was signed in a grand ceremony at the Ritz-Carlton. Cameras flashed as I shook hands with the CEO. I was wearing a sharp navy power suit, my hair pulled back, completely in my element. The media dubbed me Wall Street's Iron Lady. After the press conference, Zach found me in the VIP lounge. He handed me a glass of champagne. To the Iron Lady. To surviving, I clinked my glass against his. That weekend, I took Zach home to my parents' house in Connecticut. My dad interrogated him over a game of chess, while my mom happily watched from the kitchen. Zach was respectful, intelligent, and didn't flinch under my father's scrutiny. Later that night, walking through my childhood neighborhood, Zach stopped under a street lamp. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. My breath hitched. "Zach," he laughed gently. "Relax. It's not a ring." He opened it to reveal a delicate platinum necklace with a small snowflake pendant. Snow. Because the colder it gets, the tougher you are. He fastened it around my neck. "Penny, I want to be with you. Not to control you, not to own you, but to stand next to you while you conquer the world." I looked up at him. The scars from Hunter were still there, but they no longer hurt. They were just proof that I had survived. "I'm going to be very busy," I warned him softly. "I'm an MD now." "Good." Zach smiled, pulling me into a warm, firm embrace. "I'm a CEO. We can schedule our dates on our corporate calendars." I wrapped my arms around his neck and kissed him. The suburban street was quiet, but inside, I felt like a symphony was playing. I am Penelope Snow, managing director at Morgan Stanley. I walked away from a nightmare, destroyed those who tried to break me, and built my own empire. And this time, I was writing my own happily ever after.